Hello chess fans and welcome to Chess Vibe, and today we are going to talk about the round number 9 of the FIDE Grand Swiss 2021. And the game is between none other than Caruana Fabiano versus Alireza Firouzja. That's just one of the top best chess players in the world. To see their classical game is going to be just awesome. First of all, this is the round number 9 and Alireza Firouzja is just the sole leader, leading with 6.5 points, whereas Caruana Fabiano is currently having 5.5 points. So Caruana Fabiano is just in a must-win situation, so that he would be able to get a chance to get qualified for the Candidates 2022. So let's check it out. What happened in this interesting encounter between these two players. So till then, stay tuned and keep watching Chess Vibes. So Caruana Fabiano with the white pieces started the game with 1 e4, and Alireza Firouzja with the black pieces replied with c6. So first of all, Alireza Firouzja is just a very fighting player. He likes to fight, he likes to complicate the things, and he's a very complicated player. Yeah, he likes to play it, and this is where many players get stuck into. So let's check it out. So after c6 we have the caro-kann, d4 d5, and we have the advanced caro-kann variation, and Alireza Firouzja simply played bishop to f5. We have h4, so white idea is to play g4 and trap the bishop. So because after bishop g6, white is having h5. So after h4, the regular reply is to play h5, played by Alireza. And now we have bishop to d3 by white. And after bishop d3, black traded the bishops. And if you see the position, compare the position, first of all, white is having more space in the center, which gives an advantage to white. But the problem for white here is the same problem. First of all, the center pawns are on the dark squares, and black is currently having the dark squares, which gives a slightly advantage to black, which makes the overall position equal. So after queen into d3, there are two variations. White can play e6 or black can play queen f5 check. Here black played queen to a5 check. And there are two moves in this variation. White can play knight d2 and bishop d2. Caruana played knight to d2, and the reason Caruana played knight to d2 at the place of bishop d2 here is because after knight to d2, the common reply for black is to play queen to a6. And after queen a6, there comes a very strong move in this position. You can feel to pause the video and try to find the best move for white in this position. I'll give you a couple of seconds. Okay, so hope you would have had a deep nice thought and you would have came up with the move e6, a very nice move. And after e6, if black would have simply traded off the queens, first white will capture the pawn on f7 with a check, and after king into f7, c into d3, definitely white is having these two pawns isolated in the center, which makes white game a bit weaker. But on the other side, just look at these two crucial squares on g5 and on the e5. These two are the critical squares which white is going to take control of, which gives actually white a nice advantage. Because after c into d3, if black tries to play knight to d7, knight f3, e6, knight h3, knight h6, and after knight g5 check, king g8, white is already better in this position. That was the reason Caruana played knight to d2, and he didn't went for the bishop d2, because in this position, if you try to play bishop d2, now queen is 6, and if you go for the same variation, but this time after capture, king capture, pawn captures, you can see the knight is on b1 at the place of d2, so that it is going to take a long journey for the knight to come on e5. So the idea is basically not going to work, which makes the position equal in this position. So that is the reason Caruana played knight to d2, the right move. And after knight d2, Alireza played e6, stopping this e6 idea from white side. And now white played knight to e2. Idea is to perhaps play f4 and castle and just go with f5. After knight e2, black played knight d7. We have b4 by white. So b4 is already a novelty by Caruana. The reason b4 is a very nice move is because after queen into b4, white is having a very strong move, rook b1, hitting the queen and the pawn, and yep, white is better. So that's why after b4, Alireza played queen a6, going for a queen trade, because in the end you can see black is having the black colored bishop, so it is going to give an advantage to black in the end game. So definitely black wants to trade off the queens. So after queen a6, Caruana now played queen to b3, not trading off the queens. We have knight to f5, knight to f3, knight to d7, at a4 from white. After a4, first of all, white cannot castle in the position because the knight is hanging on e2. All those who were thinking why not castle, the knight is hanging. After a4, black played queen to c4, going for a queen trade. And here Caruana played bishop to d2, saying, okay, do you want to trade queens? I'm ready for it. So we have a queen trade, and now black played f6, trying to open up the position. We know that Alireza likes to play the open position, so he's trying to make the position a bit complicated, trying to open up the position. So after f6, white played castle. We have bishop e7, g3, king to f7, just now connecting the rooks finally. And now we have rook to e1 by white. And finally we have the pawn trade in the center, f into e5, and now we have d into e5. The reason he didn't capture the pawn with the knight, because after knight into, black is very sure that okay, he will capture, and black is having no problem. But capturing with the pawn makes the knight on d7 a little bit more uncomfortable, because there is no good square for the knight to go on. So that's why after d into e5, black played here rook to c8, trying to open up the position at some point. White played knight to f4. We have d4 by black, already a mistake by Alireza Firouzja. You can say it as an inaccuracy, because after knight to f4, after d4, first of all, the thing here is, after d4, it makes the pawn isolated. The pawn becomes a bit weak, and white can simply play rook c1, perhaps a5, stopping this knight b6 ideas. Play rook c4, putting more pressure, and yep, these are the problems black is going to face. At the place of playing d4, black should have played g6 and just waited for white to respond, how white is going to create his chances in the game. Okay, but he played d4. After d4, white played simply rook c1. We have c5 trying to open up the position. And now we have knight to d5 by Caruana. Yep. So Caruana is in his perfect shape. He's not messing around. He's just completely focused. And he found this interesting move, knight to d5. After knight d5, the reason is simple. You cannot capture the knight because of a very powerful move. e6 check. Hitting the king, hitting the knight. So after king e8, a pawn captures the knight. King into pawn. Knight to e5 check. King e8, and now we have knight to g6, hitting the bishop, hitting the rook. And if you try to protect the rook by playing rook g8, white is simply going to play bishop g5. And now it's already completely triple attack, and it's already winning for white. That is the reason you cannot capture the knight, and black played in this position c into b4, capturing the pawn. We have knight into e7, knight into e7, and now we have finally knight to g5 check. King to g6, and now finally a rook trade, and now we have simply knight into e6. After knight into e6, yep, just calculate the pawns. White is having total 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pawns. Black is having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pawns. So material wise, it's an equal position, but just look at the position. White pawn on e5 is just a very advanced pawn. The king on g6 is actually very weak, so eventually it gives the winning position, better position to white at least. And after knight into e6, black played knight to c6, and here f4, just cementing the pawn structure. Yeah, very nice from the white side. And after f4, black played king to f5. You have to play king f5 because actually there is no move. Rather than playing a king f5, you need to enter in the white area. So after king f5, basically black sacked the pawn. We have king g6 back. You have knight to e6, king to f5. So perhaps Alireza is like, okay, I'm fine with a draw. But actually it's winning for white. So we have knight to g5 by Caruana, just bringing back his knight. We're trying to push his pawn. We have knight to c5. Knight to f7, threatening a knight d6 fork and trying to kill the rook. We have king to e6, knight to d6, rook to g8, hitting the pawn on g3. We have king g2, king to d5, rook to b1, protecting the pawn. We have knight to e4, hitting the bishop, hitting the pawn. So white simply just traded off the knights, and white played rook to c1. King d3, bishop e1, king to e2, and after king e2, when I just saw at my first glance, it looked like, okay, perhaps black is better somehow, I don't know, because of the pawn on d4, because pawn is actually very powerful. So what is white going to do? But it turned out that after king e2, white is having a powerful move, e6, just going for the pawn push. We have d3, and now we have f5. Yep, just going with the 2 pawns. And okay, we have knight to d4 by black, trying to hit the pawns. So now we have bishop into b4, d2 by black, and now white sacrificed the bishop. King into d2, we have rook to c5, protecting the pawn. And after rook to e8, rook to e5, it's already better for white. White is protecting both the pawns, and even black is having the knight. In exchange of 3 pawns, white is better. And even if you try to capture the pawn, like saying okay, after rook into f5, black can capture the pawn, basically it's not going to work because rook into h5, and white is having the 2 passed pawns, and white is going to win the game. So after rook to e5, black played king to d3, king f2, rook to e7. So black is simply going to wait. Black is having actually no option. He have to wait. We have finally g4 by Caruana. He saw just a breakthrough. At g4, king g3, and we have rook e8, king into g4, knight to c6, hitting the rook. We have king to f4 by white, a fantastic move by Caruana. You basically cannot capture the rook because after king into e5, these 2 pawns are simply going to rush, and it's game over for black. So after king to f4, we have knight to e7 by black, f6, finally pushing up the pawns, and now we have knight to g6 check, hitting the rook, hitting the king. And after king to f5, we have knight into h4 check, king to g5, knight to f3 check, king to f4, knight to d4. You still cannot capture the rook because after king into e5, these 2 pawns are extremely strong, and it's not going to win. If I show you for an example line, like for example king c3 trying to grab these pawns, white is simply going to play f7, and after rook to f8, you can simply play e7 and just trying to make a queen. Rook takes queen, and it's already winning for white. So that's where knight to d4 was played, and now we have finally e7 by black. Knight to c6, f7, rook into e7. So Alireza thought, okay, perhaps a trap can work, because in this position, if you try to capture the rook, knight into rook, you can't make a queen because after knight g6 check, it's a fork and you lose the queen. Nice final trick by Alireza by capturing the pawn, but Caruana was already alert from it, and he first played rook to d5 check. King is forced to move, and white will simply make a queen. So that's why after rook d5 check on the move number 54, Alireza Firouzja with the black pieces resigned the game, and finally Caruana Fabiano with the 6.5 points. Now there are no sole leaders, but there are joint winners. So first of all, top 2 winners of these chess.com FIDE Grand Swiss will be qualified for the 2022 candidates. So let's check it out, who will be able to qualify for the candidates. So first of all, this game was superb, interesting. All the caro-kann players must watch this game, and if you want to crush the caro-kann, I think still this is a very nice line. You can go for it. So if you first of all like this game, then make sure to like the video. If you are new to my channel, then make sure to subscribe the channel, because I'm going to come up with these new videos for you. So I'm going to keep entertaining you and going to help you improve your chess level skills. So I'll meet you next time. So till then, stay tuned and keep watching Chess Vibes.